Okay, class, today we're going to talk about APA 7 and proper citation. Class, APA citation! Okay, good.
Welcome to this podcast recording. We are here with Professor Thomas Sullivan and Dean Sara. We are going to be talking today about our favorite topic, citation.
Oh,
Yay!
yes.
APA 7. How exciting.
APA 7. How exciting does it get? That is my absolute favorite thing to do whenever I'm doing a report.
Mine too.
So I'm glad to be talking to the experts right here. And so just a little bit about the structure. We're going to talk about APA citation, the why, the how. We're going to get to the bottom of some problems that students commonly have when they're citing in APA, particularly with AI. Personally, I don't know if AI ever shows up in my reports, but in case it will ever show up.
I can tell you it shows up sometimes.
Even if you think it doesn't show up, I see AI in your submissions.
Exactly. So in case it ever shows up, this is how I would cite it. And then we're going to talk about generally artificial intelligence, AI, through our academic experience, and see how that should play a role responsibly. So I think we should start with a conversation on the APA, unless you have something to add before we start?
No, I think let's get started with the fun stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just touching on that. Mostly the areas that we want to focus on have to do with use of AI and the idea of using source materials that are really your own in terms of conducting interviews or having conversations, and how do you put those into a document that you produce.
Yeah, I think students don't realize how much they're using AI and how creatively they can use it. And whether you see it or not, faculty see it and we see it when you use it. There's patterns that come up when you use AI, and at some point we're looking at the same material in different ways, and we can detect when AI is being used, and or when students really put the thinking and do the process of thinking and elaborating their own material into the paper. So I encourage everybody not to use AI to just substitute thinking. It should be a tool for all of you.
Yeah, and so from the faculty perspective, I can detect AI. You only do one paper. You do one submission to somebody like me. I read 40, 50, 60 of the same things, and I can tell you certain things, like I taught a class, 20 hours worth of class. 5 minutes was spent on one topic, which was called 3 lenses of a kind of moral framework. Every single paper used that. And I was looking at it, maybe not every single one. 75% of the papers use that. 5 minutes of class time in 20 hours. That can only be that AI picked that up. Not everybody else was picking that up. It got so little treatment. So something like that, I see it. You don't see it because it's only one time, and it looks creative and kind of cool to include it in your analysis. And it shows one thing: AI liked that.
Yeah.
And so what you get out of AI is you get a pattern, and it is lazy. Like the human mind is lazy, AI is lazy. So when it finds a pattern that works, it wants to repeat that pattern over and over again. So it's natural that I would see the 3-lens framework in 75% of the papers, because AI found something that people liked. And don't forget, AI is organized to have you like it and want to use it. So once they find something that people like, it will keep doing it.
Can I highlight just one thing? Because this is not a discouragement to use AI.
No,
this is on the contrary. We want to learn how to use it, because that's what matters and that's what's important, to make sure that you don't lose your voice in the process, and that you are able to produce and create something unique that is about you and that it's of you in your assessments as well. And funny enough as well, something that I want to add, because you see it while reading your papers, and something that I've experienced as well is that, yes, we use it to create scripts as well for presentations, and that's okay. However, just don't make sure that you are kind of revising it and you're not reading through that script, because again, when you're watching more than one, you can see the pattern of when people are just talking AI and they're not talking themselves. And we want you to make sure that you are talking through your own voice and through your own selves.
So Sarah, can you say something about why we even want to talk about the APA citation? Because I think it's directly related to that.
Yeah. I mean, I always say it's like we're not going to just go around and use somebody else's car. We're not going to go around and just say, oh, this is my idea and make it mine. And that's what happens with the use of citation and the importance of the use of citation in academia. In academia, this is a part of acknowledging intellectual property and acknowledging somebody else's work. And that's why we need to, and it's important that we use APA citation, that we use AI referencing when it comes to producing work or to writing an assignment.
Yeah, and as a student, you should use other people's work. You should be informed by that. That's why we teach to materials, and you should use the materials that we teach to. You should use your own secondary research. You should always be looking for sources. But the important thing is, and this is important particularly in the age of AI, which democratizes information and democratizes organization and increases efficiency of writing and written output, is, what's yours? Where's your voice? Where's your creative input in this? And we want to be able to distinguish your creative analysis, interpretation, and insights from what other people have produced. And then you're standing on their shoulders, as the great, who said that? That was Isaac Newton said, I stand on the shoulders of giants, as he creates the theory of gravity.
That's great. So, I think a lot of students do want to be more creative. Actually, we could have an entirely different conversation on the challenge of students actually discovering their own voice, because, right now, when you talk about artificial intelligence, what it's done is that now it sort of becomes the baseline standard. So I think we've gotten to a point, or we're getting to that point, where people haven't even, especially if you're getting into undergrad, doing certain things like this, you really haven't developed a voice yet. And then now AI comes to sort of become your default voice, and it becomes a problem. But you don't want everyone in the world to have the same voice. It becomes boring. So I think this is just us needing to have that responsibility to actually go out and discover our own voice, right? And that's really by getting off the algorithms once in a while. Let's go, try to read some more. Let's try to write some more. In the research club, we do encourage students to not only conduct research, but also put it out into the world so that it's criticized. And I do agree with citation being very important, because even though it can be a little bit tedious, it also enables sort of the people who are reading to find a breadcrumb trail of ideas, so that they can find where you got inspired. They can get inspired to, or they can critique those ideas. They can improve your thinking on certain things, and that certainly should be our responsibility as researchers and thinkers and academics.
I'm going to interrupt a little bit because you bring up a very interesting point about knowledge development and about developing and understanding yourself to be able to make a piece of document or assessment in this case. It feels like nowadays it's intentional. The way that if you want to develop knowledge, if you want to make something up, it needs to be intentional. We no longer take that risk of starting from a blank page. We just want to start with something that AI creates. And I invite you guys to start from a blank page. What's the worst thing that can happen? You prompt it to AI and it fixes the way in which you structure your assignment. This is the whole point of as well AI. This is one of the points of AI that will help you structure better your assignment. But don't be afraid of starting from a blank paper so that you can have your style and your voice be in it as well. What do you think, Thomas?
Well, I think that's essential. If you're gonna do something that is unique and your own, even if somebody else has done it, you start with curiosity. So what are you trying to understand? What do you want to understand? If you start with that question instead of what do I have to do for this assignment, you'll come up with something better for yourself in the long run. I think what you were saying comes back to what we want is we want you to be unique. We want you to be something that somebody can recognize in the workplace and say, we want that. And that's your voice that comes out with it. Interestingly, as I think about the evolution of AI, I go back to assignments turned in April 2022. So assignments turned in, I could predict a bell curve, a perfect bell curve, right? There was a perfect bell curve. Maybe there was a couple people who did a terrible job and they got a D or an F, and then it goes up into C's and B's and high B's, and then it gets down to a few A's, right? Like that. In April 2023, the bell curve starts here.
Yeah.
It goes like this. Everybody can do a B paper, at the worst a B- paper. Okay, people's writing did not suddenly improve.
That's
okay?
a long time ago, Thomas.
I know.
We don't
it's
remember
ancient
those
history
times.
at this point, right? 3 years ago. So I never see a bad assignment turned in anymore. But I don't see people's voice come through. I don't see their creativity. I don't see their curiosity. I don't see their discovery. And if I'm a hiring manager, I want to know, am I getting somebody who's going to be generative, or I'm getting somebody who's just going to follow the script or the rules? And that's why this, I think, becomes really important as well, not only in terms of producing academic output, but in terms of presenting yourself to the marketplace. Like, here's who I am, here's what I have done. Whenever I give assignments to students that are paper-driven assignments, I always say, write something you would be proud to put in a LinkedIn post. You do that and you create copy for people to know you. You've got a record of that. It's not just an assignment, it's your announcement to the world about how you think and what's interesting to you and what you bring.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's what you're saying is there's been sort of a deviation to the mean, which is what AI sort of does, right? It gets everyone to the point where you can be average, but
Good average.
Good average.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen conversations and studies that it goes beyond even fields that are more, let's say, business oriented to even more technical fields like a finance paper, things like that. It can do quite good analysis on, at least a B plus level if it's trained on every single thing that, let's say, a professor has taught. It can come up with a B plus, but how many A's and A pluses are coming, right? So if everyone is deviating to the mean, yes, it elevates some people, but then again, it might make us mentally lazy to the point where we're not using AI as a tool to actually elevate ourselves, but we're using it as a crutch to, instead of to shoot for that A and that A plus, we're really getting down to the B plus level just because it's passable, right?
Yeah. And so, how does how does AI become the tool I want it to be for me? How does it augment me as opposed to just satisfy a random set of assignment needs or the minimum required.
Exactly.
Yes, so that's a good question. As you pose it, I can say what I do personally.
Yeah.
In my own work as a whole, not really academically, but even when I'm writing my blogs, because I do quite a bit of blog writing. What I do is I prefer to use it to sort of ground the structure of what I'm going for. So I like to start with structure. I always say writing is structure. So once you understand the structure of what you're trying to go for, at least it's giving you some optionality, then you can tell it, okay, give me, it's like I don't know what philosopher, is it Socratic method or whatever?
Yes.
When they ask you ask yourself questions, right? You question yourself in order to fulfill these ideas that are posited and to fit the structure. What questions do I need to answer? So that really comes back to me. And it's become much more robust because back in the day when I used to write blogs, I used to have to come up with everything.
Exactly.
In a way that I couldn't get the tool to ask me questions that make my ideas more defensible, make them more robust. I get the tool to ask me the questions. I write down the answers. I say this question matters, this question doesn't matter. Once I have everything and it's in my voice, I can put it in, say structure it like this. Maybe give me another option. Maybe I give it a sample of the writing I've done in the past and say, okay, make it sound more like this, or give me a few variations of this. I can take a piece from this, a piece from this. I consolidate it together. At the end of the day, you have a much more unique and interesting piece. And for me, at least, I've come up with much better output in terms of quality that just I wouldn't have ever been able to do before.
And also, where instead of asking make this or that, ask it questions. Does this make sense? I'm trying to say XYZ. Do you understand it this way? How would you make it? How would you improve it so that I can make X point? So it's really, that's when you're using it as a tool. You're talking to it, you're challenging yourself, and that's the whole point. Challenge yourself through the process of learning, because it really can help you do that and take it to the next level.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to mention something on that. It's that it's not a search engine, it's a tool.
Indeed.
Right?
Yes.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Meaning you can question it. You can actually question it and it tells you something, but you need the expertise to be able to say, okay, look, that might not be correct. Let's go this way. Let's think about it like this, right? Professor?
Well, you can. I'm not a doctor, but that's okay. You can call me doctor.
Yes, Professor.
You can stress test your ideas. That's what you're saying. Like, use the questions. So where does this argument fall apart? Where is my logic flawed? Where will people not understand what I'm trying to say? So as a means of communication, use it to improve your ideas, just like the two of you were talking about. Like I would call that stress testing your ideas. Get it to stress test your ideas so that you come up with something more robust. And it's not you're not asking it to tell you what to do. You're asking it to tell you where you can improve what it is that you're doing.
Exactly.
And then it might have ideas. Of course it does. It chats a lot.
But let's face it, a lot of people, we use it as a search engine. Now, this is where we need to check, right? So while it's gonna give information, we need to always check, and the proper search agents should to be able to look of where the information is coming from, and is it valid or is it making up information. And that's where I think the importance of referencing APA, linking it back to citation, where we need to start putting a loop and looking into things. It makes up links for when they are make up citations. It makes up references as per and depending on how you prompt it. So we need to check everything, and I think this would be a great way of moving towards APA citations and references. How do we do it?
Yep. So let's head that way. I think this is the time to go into, a couple of different areas of APA. The other thing I'll say, just a couple of different things. So, one of the, in a written piece of work that as a professor I see, where I start to recognize the pattern AI likes, particularly ChatGPT likes, is a constant reference to a phrasing like this. If you're talking about topic A, most people think it's B, but really it's C. And it sets up this, it's not one thing, it's another thing. That repeated format of here's what you're talking about. It's not really this, it's that. As soon as I see that, I know people have been using AI, and then I look for it in citation. And sometimes I find it, only sometimes.
And sometimes it's a broken link.
Yes.
And it takes you nowhere.
Now, those broken links are extremely dangerous. People do need to double check those links. I think it's a very important part of the process of turning something in, because our AI, even though it empowers you, the human is still in control and takes responsibility for the work, right? So it means when you put something out and it's AI, now there's even been big scandals in some of these larger universities with PhDs, people who have all these credentials turning in work that is AI generated, right? And it causes a lot of problems, right? So even though you're publishing something that is AI, you do have the responsibility to make sure that it's representing your work as well as it can.
Indeed. Yeah.
So Sarah, you want to go into what we identified as a couple of important, why don't you say something about APA in general, where students can find the
Yes.
APA citation
So we go
guidelines?
through the whole APA session during orientation, and of course, as you get into the courses, maybe the information starts fading away from our brains until you need it. And you can find them in your course pages, you can find them in Academic Essentials, and I invite you all also to search it in APA guidelines. It's in the website of APA as well, to double check if what you have and what you're doing is the right way of referencing using APA 7th edition, which is the current way in which we kind of cite our work. There's, if we're going to talk about the how, it really depends on how you are or how you're going to reference an information in your paper. It's either quotation or you're paraphrasing. If you're quoting, you're copy-pasting something directly from a paper that it's been written by someone to your paper, and we need to make sure to tell, and this is the right way in which we kind of quote in text citation. You put the last name of the author, comma, you put the year, comma, and then the page or paragraph number. And then you also have paraphrasing, which is when you use your own words to talk about the findings or information that are in a paper or knowledge developed by someone else. Let's say I'm taking something from a book or an article that Professor Thomas did, then we put Sullivan, comma, and then we put the year of publication only, right? And that's in parentheses. When it comes to in-text citation, we can't forget that for every in-text citation there should be a reference point, and that's also very, very important, and I think a lot of students forget about that. Make sure, with a simple Control F, every time that you are putting something in text, you need to find it twice in text, and you need to find it in the reference page as well.
And so that's one thing, is doing that. Another thing that I find in the assignments that I tend to give is often I'll ask people to do interviews. And the citation of interviews is always a very creative process in student papers. But there is a correct way to do this. And we've got some examples, and I don't know if you want to talk about a couple of those examples, and we'll show you some examples of what we're talking about here, where it is not quite hitting the standard of what we're looking for from an APA citation. Okay, and it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do this, but to do it correctly, to do it with discipline, shows something about both good practice and about yourself as a researcher.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to interviews, one of the most important, number one thing is you need to ask for consent of the person that you're sitting with. I'm not going to be able to reference Max or Thomas if I don't have their consent that I can use their names in the paper. And if you don't have consent of using their name, and usually these are recorded, you need to make sure that you let them know where is the data going to be storage and the safety of that data and where it's storage. And the more information that you get from the person, let's say their position or the place where they are, you need to use it as part of your in-text citation. And remember, we're talking about two things that need to happen when we are doing APA citation, which is in-text citations and references. So let's start with in-text citation when it comes to interview. This is a great example of how in-text citation is used, where you have, for example, as per the interview conducted by or with Thomas Sullivan, and then parentheses, you put the date in which that interview was conducted, and you reference it as this is a personal communication. So interview falls under the personal communication style of referencing for it. And then for that particular in-text, we need to add it as well inside of the reference. And I think a good practice or a good example, it's the following, right? It says interview transcript, you put the name of the class, you put the date in which that interview happened, and then the link of the recording, of course, again, if you have the consent of the person. Put the link of the recording, make sure that the faculty has access to that recording, that it's an unlisted, not a public link, so that anybody with the link in which you are adding that interview have access to it and can verify any type of information that they would like or they want to kind of look into.
So before I ask Matt this question, let me just say, when you ask somebody if you can record them, sometimes they'll say no. That's okay. Then you ask, can I take notes? And then your job is to take notes. Okay, so that means you're writing while they're talking. You're both doing the interview and you're thinking of the questions that you want, but you're capturing the bulk of what they're trying to say. If they say no to both of them, you really can't use the interview in your research. So you have to find somebody else to do that. The other part that Sarah's talked about is you do need to let them know who's going to be the recipient of that. In this case, really, it's only the professor, but you're going to say how you'll protect their privacy about that and agree to any guidelines that they have. So, Matt, does that help you as you're thinking about how you're going to read in the paper that you guys are doing?
Of course.
Cite the interviews.
Yes. I was just talking to Professor Sullivan and Dean Sara about we do have an interview, actually a few interviews. It's a group assignment. We have about 10 interviews between all of us, and we were really sitting yesterday and having a meeting and saying, I think we have to cite this. And I'm like, yeah, we do have to cite this because, we have 10 right. interviews. You can't really dodge around it. And we have to figure out how to cite them appropriately. So I think that this is definitely going to help that as well. But I have another question. Yeah. Maybe this is like a little bit of a deviation, but it's still on topic. More about what Professor Sullivan was saying about the way papers tend to look pretty similar nowadays, right? I would say, or an alternative argument could be that with should evaluation in itself possibly change because AI has come, and maybe there's a different way of evaluating students that maybe you should think about as academics in designing this, because if you think about a paper, traditional academic paper for class, right? You're given these substrates. You're told, these are like the frameworks you should work on or work with. This is what we've been taught in class. This is maybe like a case study you should look at. So it's really an algorithmic system, right? We could argue there's some creativity to it, but you've been told and limited by being given the information, instructions, and the rubric to tell you, look, this is what we want. This is what we're, this is what we're expecting.
Yeah.
So in that case, because it's very algorithmic, I'm not defending students here, but I'm just saying a lot of students then would be like, you know what, the AI can help me at least map out this thinking, and sort of the larger implication of that is a lot of these papers tend to be similar, right? But isn't that like a problem with, we've designed our evaluation and academic experience in a way that still hasn't adapted to what AI has brought and is bringing. What
Do you want to take that, or I can take it?
You can start.
I'll start, yeah.
I can also take something.
I mean, every creative product
Yeah.
is dealing with constraints. The painter deals with the constraints of the canvas and the constraints of the possibilities of the paper. A musician deals with the constraints of the instruments and the notes, and we have to deal with constraints when we write, right? So, some of the constraints are, yes, there's a structure to it, and you should follow the structure, right? And in part of the structure, in this case, what we're talking about is APA referencing, yes, we want to build on others. So yes, there is something formulaic about that within that. And at the same time, there's enormous creativity that can occur. When I assign things to my students, I will say, here's what I want you to write about. I want you to write about high performance teams. Okay, well, that's pretty broad, right? But it's a constraint as well. I don't want you to write about, how do you do the best coding you can do? I want you to write about high-performance teams. So within that, what can people do? They can do all sorts of things. And I ask them to start with, what are you curious about in high-performance teams? And, my favorite paper that ever got turned in was a couple of years ago. A group of students wrote about the advent of emojis as the newest language on the planet and how emojis are used in the workplace. I'm like, that's great. Let's write about that.
How creative is that? That's amazing.
That's good.
And then they still have to follow the structure of the paper, right? So everything's constrained, and inside those constraints is where you can really generate creativity, right?
I think you also touch base on something that is a continuous conversation in academia, which is how do we evaluate students, right? And do we have a one standard answer? No. Should we? I don't think so. I think there is, and it depends on the topic, right? But, and funny enough, I hear it from students, oh, this is not that detailed, this rubric. Yes, just like evaluating high performance team, it's so broad, but then if you prompt it to AI, it's gonna give you a specific structure, which is square, right? And it's not as creative than if you use your brain or your imagination, your thinking, to make it sound unique, just like that student did. So we think that, with AI we're going to have more specific, sometimes it's even broader type of topics, so that we can see what you do with it and where you go with it. And evaluations and the way that it's being evaluated, of course, it's being rethought. And I think that if you look at my courses or those pages, course pages from April 2022, and you look at them today, they look very different in how the assignments are structured as well, because the faculty have been, at least at Hult, I can tell you that they have been implementing changes to be able to work with a new age of AI, and we've been very quick adapting to AI and having students encourage them to use it and to teach them how to use it in the right way. And if you hear any discouragement, it's just because there's a lot of ways in which it's being used that will not serve you for your learning process. And that has been my experience at what I have seen with endless conversations with faculty and in groups or one-on-ones as well.
And Matt, it's a great question because AI is changing what we're capable of doing in an educational format. And so, we're not just, we can no longer just measure to knowledge accumulation. We can't just test how much more you know today than yesterday. With some part of what we have to do has to move into more competency-based. Based on what you know, what can you now do? How much more effective can you be than you were before? I don't think we've gotten there yet.
No.
And I think that's going to be, maybe the most important question for higher education and even primary and secondary education for the next 20 years.
Indeed.
I mean, it is an important thing because whenever these innovations in information technology come that are particularly like prescient, like this one, there's always going to be a big shift that takes a while so that you can see the changes really move through the system. I was reading about the biggest information technology shift of all time was likely the Gutenberg press, right? Books used to cost don't quote me on this, but maybe $70,000 in today's money, just because every single book was written out by a scribe, and it had to be copied by other scribes, and it would take forever.
Yeah.
It was terrible, right?
Yes.
Max, we used to buy encyclopedias.
Yeah.
I used to get encyclopedias in
Me
high
too.
school.
I didn't know.
I used to go to the library.
Exactly, and it's amazing. So now, the Gutenberg press changed everything. So it lowered the cost of knowledge, the cost of books, which is incredible. Now it's even more amazing. I have a lot of books I've read. I don't have a giant library. Everything is on my trusty iPad right here. I have a couple of books, but I like having everything here. I have 100 books. And I can.
You have access to the more knowledge than anybody has ever had in human history.
Yes,
right there.
indeed.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Can't get around that.
Exactly. And there's power in that, right? So it's about understanding the age we're in, and also being, as thinkers and academics as well, being open to being a part of the new revolutions and building the new systems for evaluation, critical thinking in that way, so that we can systematize ways where these students can actually become more competent in doing what they need to do.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Matt, that's so well said.
Yeah.
I can tell it's well said because my internal state is fear. It's like, how am I going to stay ahead of this?
Yeah.
How can I actually be a contributor? How can I be somebody who is at the forefront of this instead of sort of set aside as it bypasses me, right? And I think that's I'm not really that scared, but I can tell that sense of anxiety comes up in me in thinking about this because it does require a rethinking of the role of a faculty in an academic setting with the advent of AI. And I particularly see it with the advent of AI as a 24/7 tutor, coach, guide, right? That can do for a class of 25 what I could never do.
Yeah, and it all goes back to what you mentioned, Max, at the beginning. It's the self-discovery piece. So use AI so that you can discover where are you in all of this and where is your voice so that you can use it. And you'll be able to be unique and stand out from the crowd.
So Sarah,
Yes.
can you say a little bit more about what AI citation should look like? Because every paper I get does it differently.
Oh, yes. And sometimes and the students think that they can just put OpenAI, ChatGPT, 2025 and the link of ChatGPT, and this is when it comes to the references, right? That's not the right way of citing AI. put a little bit of a piece of writing or a paragraph. How did you use it? AI was used in this paper as to check on grammar and structure of thoughts, and then make sure that you add the link of your conversation with AI. There is a way in which you can share that specific link, and that link should be added in the reference. So, right, we remember in text and reference. In the in text, you say how you used AI in the paper, and you need to make sure that you add, of course, the year in which you're in. But then when it comes to the reference, make sure that inside of your reference, you're adding the link of your conversation with AI. Alternatively, if you don't have that link, and we know how lengthy those conversations can get with the bot, but if you don't have that link, you will need to add a third section, which is the appendix, with screenshots of those conversations and a trail of that conversation on how you used AI on those paper.
Don't do that.
Yes, that's going to be
Provide the
painful
link.
for the faculty.
Speaking as a faculty, don't do that.
But one more thing,
yes.
It's that I get asked a lot is, do I need to cite Grammarly? If I use it for grammar, do I need to cite AI? And the answer is no. We've used, and you said it early as well, we've used Grammarly, spell check, all our lives. We've never cited it.
For 40 years.
This is not the point, exactly.
Yeah.
But when you use Grammarly, you don't have to cite Grammarly.
So let's say that like there's 4 levels of AI use.
Mm-hmm.
So one is, sort of spelling and grammar check. No need to cite.
Yes.
Second is you're using it to structure your thinking. It's being a super editor for you. It's helping that.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Third thing that you're doing, which is what you were talking about, is helping you refine your thinking, like really being a thinking partner with you. That's another level of that. So
and for those two, the second and the third level, yes, we do have to cite it.
You do have to cite it, and we can talk about that. And then the fourth level is where you're using it from a null a starting point, right? You're asking it to generate things. You're asking it to be generative for you. We don't recommend that, right? You would recommend that you start with something. That's why I always say to my students is start with curiosity. You got it, like that's the heart of everything. And as a student, you should be cultivating that for yourself. You're not just here to get a degree, hopefully. You're here because you want to enhance who you are, and that starts with you being curious. So, again, 4 levels. Grammar, structure, thinking partner, or thought generator. Those are the 4 levels. And we would be saying, first level, you don't have to cite. Second level, do cite, as Dean Sara said. Third level, do cite, as Dean Sara said. And fourth level, hopefully you're not using that one.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about why not using that one, because this is where AI starts hallucinating and making things up. And as they make things up, they want to make things up to kind of serve you or think that they are serving you. But it doesn't mean that this is right. And this is where, 1, we need to check. And 2, we say, don't be afraid of starting in a blank paper. And with that, then you run and you develop it with the tool of AI. And that's why I think the most important part of why we discourage when you are trying to use it as a conceptualized idea generator.
Yeah, that's a fantastic insight. There's 4 levels. I think we've heard that. Don't use level 4. I think that's a pretty good takeaway. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we?
The last point that I just want to take advantage of this moment and talk about it. It's when you are generating slides with AI. Do you use it to generate slides?
Or Gamma?
No. Yeah,
right.
Gamma is one tool.
Gamma is rhythmic. It's formulaic, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but it does help make it faster. But what I'm always trying to tell the students is check it and make sure that it has your touch and that it makes sense. Because I've seen slides used in big presentations in which the presentation may be about a glass of water, but instead a glass of soda is being shown. And so what you're talking about doesn't match what the actual slides have. And here is where revision, revise, proofread, check those slides, and use it to be creative rather than to check the box and make a submission comes to play.
Yeah, and I'll say one last thing as I think about AI today. So be smart consumers, right? AI is algorithmically driven. And in order for the creators of AI, who have, the large language models who have spent enormous sums creating these systems, they need your eyeballs. They need a user. So algorithmically, they're designed to please.
Yeah.
And when they find a pattern, like say in Gamma, people are trying to put together a presentation on a particular topic, they're lazy too. Mm-hmm. The large language models default to what's the structure that has been pleasurable or they've gotten positive feedback from users before. Mm-hmm. And so that then becomes a pattern where for you, it looks great, it's clean, it's clear, it's consistent, all of that is true, but I see that same structure 40, 50, 60 times when I'm looking at an assignment. So I know that it's not original in thought.
Yes. So do we want to be original, or do we just want to be part of a big crowd? That's the main question, I guess.
That's the main question. Do you want to get a B plus, or do you want to get an A plus?
Or do you want to get a C, but you've been creative and you own it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
That's
Indeed.
That's
yeah,
great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for
and we should rethink the C's at that point.
Agree.
yeah. So thank you very much for joining us today. I think it's been a very interesting conversation.
Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah,
Thanks. Thank you.
So hope you enjoyed the episode, and hopefully we'll get more like this.
Okay.
All the best.
Amazing. Bye.